What's good, fatherhood? Where in your life have you accepted degeneration as normal? Sit with this for a second, because often collapse doesn't look like chaos until after the fact. It just looks like the status quo, just looks like normal. Things don't just fall apart overnight. They erode quietly, while everybody else learns to live with less energy, less patience, more irritation, less desire, and more friend zone roommates, less presence, and more doom and wisdom scrolling in the name of rest. Feeling like we're not getting enough time with our kids, even though we're spending 3 times more time with our kids than any previous generation of fathers in history. I'm wondering, where are we? We're not here. We're physically present, but mentally, emotionally, elsewhere. We're absent. Just tolerating the degeneration, tolerating the disconnection, the slow erosion. In our passivity, we just tolerate all of it. But where we are right now, the challenges that we face, this didn't start with you. Just a few weeks ago, I talked about Mallory Millen, her sister, and her friends gathering at Leila Karp's home in 1969. Why are we here today? To make revolution. And how do we do that? By destroying the American family. And how do we do that? By destroying the American patriarch. By taking away his power. By destroying monogamy. Record numbers of girls becoming women who have foregone marriage and foregone children, crying themselves to sleep, grieving for the children that they never have. 1/3 of a generation, Gen Z, dead because they've been aborted. Record numbers of boys becoming men who live with their parents into their 40s, becoming bitter and resentful against women, the incel culture. And we're all sitting here wondering, how the hell did we get here? Where did this all go wrong? What's happening? Is this normal? I'm going to tell you something. It's going to confuse you at first because it has something to do with cats. Yep, that's right. I said it. You heard me right. It has something to do with cats. And no, not J.D. Vance's liberal cat ladies, not them. But before we get to that, I have to hit you with something else because we spent so much time on feminism last time. I have to give you something else here. I got to hit you with another side of things. And if you're in the live stream, you're going to get this whole thing. Not in the live stream. If you're in the Riverside live stream, you're going to get the whole thing. If you're not, you're going to miss out on it. I'm going to play a clip for you right now. I want you to listen to this. I want you to pay attention to this. Where do I resonate with this? Where do I feel like he's right?
Men just do what women want.
Why?
Because they care about women and they want women to be happy and they want them to love them, right? And so you can go back to, say, the Victorian era, and men used to treat women with an extreme amount of deference because the generations living then remembered a time when the world was a lot more difficult than people now remember it being. And so the physical inequality between men and women was emphasized because the world was a much more difficult place. And so men took a paternalistic and patriarchal view on how women should be treated. And women wanted men to take that. They wanted to be safe. They wanted to be provided for. They wanted to make sure their children were safe. And men did what they could. Now men have won. They've, the fact we've got aeroplanes flying overhead and the fact that we're not about to be invaded is the victory of Western man. And then for some reason women decided, okay, well, I'm not afraid anymore. I want what you have. You don't do the things that we do, so you can't have what we have. But men just want women to be happy. They want them to love them. They want their approval. And so if gaining women's approval means pretending women are equal to men or, saying this, that, and the other, whatever it is, they'll do it. And it's completely taken men off of the throne that they sat on. And this throne was never imposed by authority, actually. It was imposed by consent. And the second women withdrew their consent for the man to be on that throne, well, the throne collapses and the men are just standing around going, okay, well, I guess I'll just play video games and drink beer all day and smoke weed. And if you don't need me, I won't do anything. Because that's really the whole raison d'etre of being a man, just to be needed by someone else. And it's always been women. And until women understand that actually they're kind of destroying men, then nothing will change because men will never be able to stand up for themselves and their own dignity.
This is the problem with living our lives to just please women and finding our worth through women is that we do things, well, just to please them. And we say, yeah, all right, honey. This is the problem with passivity. with being afraid to lead as men and to do what's right, to stand for what's right. Why? Well, because we have this unique gift of this physical strength and capability to protect people, to take care of people. Problem with passivity. We talked about feminism last time. Destroying the patriarchy, destroying the family. And as men, we said, yeah, okay, honey, yeah, I love you. I want to be accepted by you. So yeah, here you go. Let me step back. Let me become more passive. So much of the challenges in our homes and in our marriages is this breakdown in the social norms around family leadership, the relationship dynamics in marriage, talking about a woman's invisible load, a man's silent burden, and splitting housekeeping and child rearing responsibilities 50-50, that we might be modern men and modern women. But we got to talk about what's happened with men. Because I can't just put the degradation that we've seen in society and culture, and we're going to talk about the struggles, very physical, mental, emotional struggles that our kids are dealing with, that our wives are dealing with, that we're dealing with as men as well. But I can't just put this degradation on the women and talk about feminism. Can't just put it on the men either and just say, like, we've been completely passive. We've allowed this to happen. It's us versus them. We can't take that approach either. I want your thoughts on that clip. Where have you become passive here? Where have you, we're talking about degradation here, things that we might just tell ourselves are normal nowadays. Where have you friend zoned yourself in your marriage out of the desire to be nice, to avoid your wife's discomfort, your discomfort with her feelings, your discomfort with her emotions? Hard to hold space for a woman's emotions if we're not skilled. Most of us have never really received an example of how to do that. So we avoid hard conversations. We avoid depth altogether. We drift, but you'd never know. Two people sitting on a couch playing on their phones with a chasm of distance between us. So physically close, literally sitting next to each other, and yet so far. Let me know if you've felt that. I've felt that. I've lived that life. And I have to tell you something here, and you have to listen, although I suppose you don't have to. If you'd like to continue tolerating the slow erosion of yourself, your relationship, and the same slow erosion inside of your children that will follow them throughout the course of their lives, and it will follow them, you have to listen. You don't have to if you want to keep on tolerating this, but also then why are you here listening to this? And this stuff is going to follow your children. The CDC has said that kids follow 80% of our lifestyle habits, our ways of being, the ways that we are throughout the course of their lives. They pick up 80% of who we are. And it's not everything. This is just an average. If we have poor exercise and poor nutrition habits, we eat like crap, we don't exercise at all, there's an 80 to 90% chance that our kids are going to follow that route. And yet, on the contrary, there's 2 to 3 times greater chance of being active, eating well, health and fitness if dad is fit too. Our kids follow our communication and conflict resolution skills and habits and patterns. There's a 70% chance that kids that grow up in a high conflict household will create their own high conflict household. Our kids, when things are tense, are going to inherit our yelling or stonewalling, our sarcasm or our emotional withdrawal, how we fight, how we forgive, how we repair. They're going to pick up our emotional regulation. Do you blow up? You have a short fuse, you lose your temper, you shut down, you distract yourself in the phone because you want to numb out to all of it. Your kids are going to mirror that. Our kids learn how to process and express and regulate stress and emotions through co-regulation with us. That's just being in space with us. They pick that up through our nervous system. I've talked about this. If you go back to my story, especially the safe harbor, they also learn those things, how we process, express, regulate stress and emotions through mirroring, through watching. What does dad do when he's under stress? Does he play on his phone? Does he get snarky with mom? Does he overreact to us? Does he have a beer? What is it? They pick up your relationship, your marriage. Your daughter is watching and seeing what to look for and tolerate in a man. Your son is watching and seeing what to emulate, how to cherish and care for and court a woman. And if you're here, you already know all this stuff, but perhaps you don't know the extent or the significance. And 20 years ago, a lot of the stuff that I talk about here, what we talk about in this realm of showing up as legendary men and husbands and fathers, fell into the category of, well, that must be nice. guys that went to the gym, guys that ate well, guys who went to yoga, who meditated, who do breath work, that all fell into the realm of, well, that must be nice. I could never. That's not for me. It was a luxury. But now, guys, it's a non negotiable. And we could talk about all the same stuff that I have talked about hundreds of times. And I never get bored of it. How men lead in 14 out of the 15 leading causes of death over women, how 150 workplace accidents happen every single day, 95% of which are men. About 40,000 suicides, male suicides, happen every year. 3/4 of the suicides that happen are men. Our children are disproportionately affected in every single measure, not just by an absent dad, but by a dad who's not entirely there, not giving them everything that he's got, not giving his wife everything that he's got, not showing up as the example, and instead he's emotionally withdrawn, playing video games or playing on his phone on the couch or spacing out because he's in his head with all the stress, the invisible load that he's carrying while his kids are playing around him. We could talk about all that stuff. And yes, we have to talk about cats. We have to talk about cats today. We gotta talk about cats too, because cats, Francis Pottinger, guys, began to research cats in the 1930s because, well, they weren't making it through his studies. I think he was studying thyroid, and they were not making it through his studies, so he couldn't do anything with them. And he was wondering, what is happening with my cats? And this question of his began 10 plus years of studies. Why were my cats getting sick and dying? It's a question that he was asking. He split them into two groups. One group he fed because he suspected the food, he suspected the inputs. He fed one group raw food, raw milk. You know how delicious, beautiful raw milk is. And the other group he fed processed food, overcooked food, and pasteurized milk. That's, if you're not familiar with pasteurization, they basically boil it and heat it so much that it kills all the beneficial properties inside the milk. And what he saw was these troubling changes over generations, and also changes within the first generation of cats that were switched to pasteurized food and processed overcooked foods. The raw cats were strong, they were robust, they were energetic, they recovered really well from stress and from being startled. They had no problems mating, birthing, caring for their kittens. The males maintained hierarchy without grudges. The females cared for their kittens and they were relaxed, and there were no issues with that. But the processed food cats, he noticed marked stress increase in the processed food cats. They were neurotic. They were anxious. Anxiety in cats. They became irritable. Their immune systems compromised. They got sick all the time. They became lethargic. They began to get these abscesses and sores, especially around their mouths. And in the second generation, the bone structure began to degrade in the cats. They began to have spongy bones, more susceptible to injuries. And look back at your World War II grandparents, your grandfather's great-grandfather who was in the service, your grandmother, great-grandmother serving as a nurse. You can look at their facial structures, and then you can look at men nowadays, males, even the boys, and you can see a very massive difference just in the facial structure. We used to look more masculine. But in the second generation of Pottinger's cats, the male cats began to become more docile, and their bone structure started to change. They began to become more slight, like the female cats. The female cats began to become more aggressive, even dangerous to handle for the researchers. The male cats began to have trouble mounting the female cats because of this aggression. And both the male and female cats struggled to recover from stress, from being startled. They were nervous, they were anxious, they paced all the time, and they would withdraw to hide, something that they didn't see in the raw food, healthy, robust cats. And then they began to experience, in the first generation and the second generation, infertility, miscarriage, stillbirth, things that rarely happened, if at all, in the healthy, robust, raw-fed cats. The female cats struggled to bond with their kittens now in the second generation. They began to reject their kittens. They lost the maternal, nurturing urge, not just the urge, but just the knowing, the wisdom, the innate wisdom. And some of them even ate their own kittens. They cannibalized their kittens. And by the third generation, the male cats weren't even becoming more slight, but they began to resemble the former female cats. If you looked at the male cat, you would think that's a girl cat. It wasn't. In their bone structure, even in their demeanor, passive. And the female cats began to resemble the former male cats. You look at them and be like, wow, big, more muscular, broad, aggressive. Male cat, but you would be wrong. By the fourth generation, they lost the ability to procreate at all, and the line became extinct. Complete failure. And none of it appeared as chaos in the moment. None of it happened overnight. This happened over time. It was a slow erosion of the way that things had been, of tradition, of status quo. Not because the social norms of the cats became outdated, but because of nutritional deficit of the inputs, of sickness, and of slow degeneration. Stay with me. So we've talked about the feminist movement, the masculinization of the feminine. We've talked about the destruction of the family unit, the breakdown of the social structure that holds everything together in our society. We've talked about how our children suffered exponentially due to the failure of the family, removal of dad, the passivity of dad. We talked about the passivity and complacency of men. That clip that I shared just a few moments ago, how our children suffer for that disproportionately when dad just isn't showing up actively. But I don't believe that it's these social movements that are the issue. I think that it's deeper. I think that it's worse than that. I don't think it's some conspiracy. And naively, we introduced processed foods after World War II, after our women entered the workforce and saw, wow, I can work, I can make money, I can bring something else home. More taxable income, more meaning for women. Filling in the gap was fast foods because there was just no time to make food anymore. Distracting ourselves and our kids from the busyness of it all with more activities, with TV, distracting ourselves from the stress, the overwhelm as we drift further apart from our wives and our families, the trope of the overworking dad in Hook and the Santa Claus. All of these things coming about post-World War II, after the introduction of processed foods, after women entering the workforce. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be in the workforce. I'm saying pay attention. What are the inputs that changed? What is the nourishment that was removed? I don't believe it's just the times, what's happening in the world right now. The breakdown of the family unit, of feminism, of the passivity of men, passive male. I don't believe it's progress or progressivism. I don't believe that it's the modern woman, nor is it the modern man. I think that we are living in and watching the third and fourth generation of Pottinger's cats right now. Only it's not Pottinger's cats, it's Pottinger's people. And it's not us who are going to suffer for it. It's our kids. Obesity in children was 8% in 1990. 2022 is 20%. That's 1 in 5 kids. You walk down your street and find them. Maybe it's your own kids. I'm not shaming you. There are more kids that are overweight in the world right now than underweight. There's been a doubling of childhood hypertension. That's physical. But depression and anxiety, the mental and emotional disorders. In 2005, 12% of girls reported having a major depressive episode in the past year. Boys, 4 to 5%. Fast forward 10 years, the introduction of the iPhone, smartphones. As social media was present, Facebook was around. Depression, our girls from 12% to 20%. 10 years. And our boys from 4 to 5% to 7%. Fast forward 2015 to 2022, not even a 10-year span of time. Our girls went from 20% having major depressive episode in the past year to 30%. From 12 in 2005. Our boys up to 12% from 4 to 5%. Yes, that's social media. Yes, that's smartphones, but pay attention to the pattern here. Pay attention to Pottinger's cats. What's beneath that? Because I think it's more than just the phones. I think it's more than just social media. I think it's an inability to cope with stress and a desire to avoid it at all costs. Where do you do this? And it's not just stress, it's emotion. To distract ourselves from it. Where do you distract yourself from it? Just like Pottinger's cat's desire to withdraw, because it's easier to hide than to be a part of life, whether it's good or bad. But that's not it. That's not all of it. Because if we look back at the past 50 years, Dr. Shauna Swan's work in the book Countdown, and she has some great videos on After School if you go on YouTube. The levels of testosterone, the average level of testosterone in males has dropped 1% a year over the past 50 years. We are literally half the men that our grandfathers were. Erectile dysfunction has gone up at the same rate, 1% a year over the past 50 years. These are not just grown men like me, 30, 39 years old. These are 18 and 19-year-old boys having erectile dysfunction. And yes, boys access pornography at the age of 10, and the most consistent place that they find it, hardcore, anything goes, internet pornography, is at school. Part of that is that their dopamine systems are ruined, but part of that, Pottinger's cats, changes in the inputs. But it's not just testosterone and erectile dysfunction. It's not just the boys, because in women, Dr. Swan noticed the exact same thing. Miscarriage and infertility increasing at the same rate. And actually, I think Dr. Swan updated her work in 2019 that at least testosterone, it wasn't 1% anymore. It's 2.7%. The average level of testosterone has dropped 2.7% a year every year the past 50 years. We could all just say it's a coincidence that all these things are unfolding. At the same time, we have this feminist movement that is bent on destroying the patriarchy and the nuclear family. And men, we have male passivity, just like us. Yeah, whatever. What do you want, honey? I just want you to love me. I want you to accept me. Yeah, whatever you want. We have obesity skyrocketing, anxiety, depression, testosterone tanking, erectile dysfunction on the rise, miscarriage, infertility rising. We could say it's a coincidence. I don't think it is. We could say it's a conspiracy. Maybe it is. People breathing together doing this on purpose. But Hanlon's razor, do not attribute to malice that which can be attributed to stupidity. I think that we just did dumb stuff. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's worse. I think we were naive. I think that now we're passive. And so we're seeing all of this stuff amplifying. I think that's what happens when we as men abdicate leadership inside the home and we just resign ourselves to what is, because this is just how things are. This is just the story. This is what happens with everyone. We end up with men who bury their stress and anxiety with low testosterone and high cortisol levels, erectile dysfunction, who are addicted to porn and counterfeit comforts to numb out the stress and anxiety while burning out our dopamine pathways and being completely burned out. We're zombies. We're walking around as a shell. Nice guys, passive men, resentful incel culture, happy wife, happy life men who are afraid to displease their wives or afraid of the discomfort of the emotion of our wives. Men and women whose nervous systems can't handle tension or delayed gratification or effort or rejection and reach for instant relief because we just can't feel bad. We end up with women who are anxious and hypervigilant, pressed, neurotically focused on threats, especially the threats of male. Think about all the women who would rather be alone with a bear in the wild than a man. Women struggling with low libido, tanking desire, their bodies closed. And maybe you've heard this from your wife, I'm just not physical like you are. It's a lie. Women are extremely physical when they feel safe. Women who are overwhelmed by the responsibility of mothering while balancing everything else. Because you can be a boss babe and raise kids too, while never feeling safe enough to open, to soften, to be in a relationship of depth with a man. Meanwhile, our kids are hyperactive. They're anxious, being diagnosed with all kinds of things like ADHD. We have children that have this level of sensory overwhelm that we've never seen before. We need safe spaces for them. Guys, we're living in Pottinger's cat's experiment. We're living in it. We are the third generation and our kids are the fourth. And it's time to wake up. And I'm not just talking about eating right and working out. I'm talking about the shit that you've laughed at your wife for telling you to do. The yoga, meditation, breath. Maybe she's told you need to go see a therapist, but I don't know. I don't know about that. But I do know about the emotional mastery work. I do know about learning what to do with this stuff that you're holding on to. Because if there was anything that stood out, in addition to the physical degeneration and degradation of the male and female role reversal and the loss of interest and play and ability to procreate in Pottinger's cats, it was this thing: sympathetic nervous system dominance. The cats became locked in the stress, the anxiety of chronic fight or flight activation. It's the same thing that has you reaching for your phone, an extra snack, a drink, at the end of the night, another coffee, the doom scroll, the hope scroll, the wisdom scroll in the name of rest, Pornhub when nobody's looking, punishing workouts to distract you from emotion, more work to distract you, avoiding the uncomfortable work and conversations with your wife. I've coached hundreds of men since I began personal training in 2010. I never, not once, saw a man who failed because he just wasn't good enough, or because he didn't have the discipline, or because he was just a failure. Every single man failed at the margins of his inexperience when it came to one thing: stress, aka managing stress and emotions, aka nervous system regulation, aka self-regulation. And honestly, listening to this right now, if burying it worked, really, it would have worked by now. And with the stats, the way that things are shaping up, everything that I've told you, and that's not all of it, those are just some things, it's getting worse, guys. It's not getting better. And I can't imagine the world that our kids are going to grow up in, that they're going to be handed with when we pass on the torch to them. I was looking at a reel with my wife. It was probably a year ago now, of somebody who was at a museum and they were in an exhibit of smartphones and cell phones. And they were videoing this, and I was like, oh, there's my old Nokia chirp phone. I really miss that phone. And then it was like, oh, here's the first iPhone. Wow, look how old that is. And I'm sitting there like, wow, I was 15 when I had that Nokia chirp. And it wasn't but a few years later that the smartphone came up. And now I'm sitting here broadcasting to the entire planet, every 47,000 Instagram followers on this smartphone, all in the span of 10 years, 15 years. We went from a phone that was plugged into the wall to a cell phone, Nokia chirp walkie-talkie, to one that I could broadcast this to you instantaneously anywhere on the planet. We are not built for that. We are not built for that level of connection, nor the level of stimulation that's on these phones. And we're just talking about phones right now. I cannot imagine the pressures that our kids are going to be under. I can't imagine it. We as adults, we don't have the tools to manage the impulses of it, to give ourselves the right boundaries. If we don't figure it out, our kids are doomed. And most of us are ignoring that and expecting our kids just to figure it out when they get older. Our kids are in trouble if we don't figure this out. Talking about cell phones, the impulsivity around it. I'm just like, it's this thing, it possesses you. How do you feel when you go somewhere without your phone? Feels like something's wrong, right? You feel naked. That's not right. How many times you pick up your phone and you're like, why did I pick this up? You find yourself scrolling on Instagram. I didn't do what I came here to do. How many times you come home and in the name of rest, you're sitting on the couch scrolling, feeling worse afterwards than you were when you were in it. And now you're a little bit irritated, frustrated that you missed out on time with your kids, and your wife is looking at you like, well, why didn't you help with dinner? Again, Pottinger didn't document a sudden failure. He documented a slow decay. Each generation just a little bit more anxious, a little bit less physically coordinated than the last. Each generation of males a little bit more passive and withdrawn. Each generation of females a little bit more anxious, insecure, and aggressive because of that. Fertility dropped. Masculine and feminine instincts broke down. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Cats that were in it, they didn't know that anything was wrong. It was just all that they knew. That's how degeneration works, through normalization. This is just how things are. Just gonna have to live with it. Buck up. And I'm not here asking you to think about exercise and nutrition. I think you're beyond that. I'm not here to ask you to think about lab experiments right now, or feminism, or male passivity, or even cats. I'm asking you to look at your life, your energy, your marriage, your desire, level of play and passion in your marriage, your drive, your presence with your kids, how you manage stress, and answer this honestly with no need to defend or fix or explain right now. Where in your life are you tolerating the degeneration? Where are you accepting it as just normal? It's just who I am, it's how men are, it's how marriage is, it's how women are, it's how kids are. And what is that costing you? Whatever you do repeatedly, you become. First, we create ourselves. First, we create our habits, and then they create us. They create our lives. They create our children's lives. Whatever you tolerate right now walking out of this is what your kids will emulate. You don't need more motivation, discipline. You need more self-regulation for sure, but more than that, you need less lies about what's just the way it is, and the courage to stand the fuck up, create something different. Because that's the transitional character. Legend within the lineage who recognizes the patterns, says enough, puts in the work to break them once and for all, that he might give his children and his wife something different. Thanks for being here today. Have an uncommon day.